Welcome to Unit 3, which is Chapter 13, the Social-Emotional Development of Toddlers. The essential question of this unit is what interrelated toddler developments serve as preparation for the emergence of a social child, and how can adults gradually and effectively begin to socialize their toddlers? Okay, so Unit 1 is the social-emotional world of toddlers. After studying this lesson, you should be able to describe how self-awareness develops in toddlers, identify the conflict they must resolve in the second stage of Erikson's psychosocial theory, explain how parent-child relationship changes from infancy to the toddler years. You should also be able to describe secure attachments in toddlers and explain why insecure attachments lead to negative social-emotional outcomes, summarize how children express their emotions in the toddler years, and give examples of social-emotional developmental milestones that toddlers might achieve. Self-awareness, or the understanding a person has of him or herself, begins to develop at birth and continues to build throughout life. A good sense of self-awareness is essential to a person's well-being. Without a sense of self, children cannot develop close relationships and adults cannot share intimacy. Self-awareness in the toddler years involves seeing oneself as a unique person, recognizing oneself as in a mirror, and developing early feelings of self-esteem. Adults can readily note a toddler's emerging self-awareness when toddlers express possession, so when they are concerned about me and mine, and saying, me, this belongs to me, and this is mine, and identify their images as themselves and are increasingly independent. Around 2 years of age, they begin to see themselves as separate from other people and objects. They demonstrate their understanding of being a unique person in the following ways. Body awareness. They can become more aware of their bodies and what their bodies can do. By 24 months of age, children know and can name at least 7 of their body parts. They can also distinguish their body parts from those of others, such as my nose, mommy's nose, and the kitty's nose. They have sense awareness. They know they can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. They may not know, however, which body part controls which sense. Gender identity. They develop gender identity, which is the ability to label self and others as male or female, also called gender labeling. These labels are often based on physical differences like length of hair. They become upset if someone mislabels them. Object possession. Toddlers define themselves by what belongs to them and will tell you by saying so and saying, mine. Family names. They can state their own names and the names of their family members. And assimilate their culture. They begin to notice the physical traits of their ethnic group and the behaviors and values of their cultural group. They do not fully assimilate or understand and use the knowledge of their ethnicity and culture for many, many years, though. For example, some verbal comparisons with other groups or expressions of self-awareness are most often heard beginning in the preschool years. Although toddlers are becoming aware of themselves, their understanding of self is still incomplete. For example, they feel pain but don't always know where the pain is located. Unless they see a cut, scrape, or burn, they cannot tell someone where it hurts. More advanced body concepts will develop later. Toddlers can recognize themselves in mirrors between 15 and 18 months of age. Between 18 and 24 months, they can point to their reflection in the mirror, say their own name, and point to themselves in recent photos. To study their ability to recognize themselves, researchers conducted mark and mirror experiments. In one mark and mirror experiment, they first looked at themselves in a mirror. While pretending to wipe the children's faces, the experimenter put dots of red lipstick on their noses. Once again, the toddlers looked at themselves in a mirror. Toddlers who recognized themselves wiped at their noses. Toddlers who did not would wipe at the nose on the face in the mirror. Once toddlers recognize themselves in mirrors, they enjoy looking at themselves and begin to distinguish their physical features. Some childcare and education programs use large, unbreakable mirrors near the floor to help toddlers develop their self-awareness. Toddlers and other children enjoy seeing how they look while playing. A portion of self-esteem involves feelings of worth, which is your usefulness or importance. Infants sense how others feel about them from the way they are spoken to and held. Toddlers can also sense how others feel about them. Toddlers must feel loved even when they are difficult or make mistakes. If adults scold toddlers each time they do something wrong, toddlers will feel they are beyond being loved. With the help of caring adults, children develop good feelings of self-worth. The confidence the person has in his or her own abilities is also part of self-esteem. As toddlers achieve goals, their competence increases. Toddlers gain another aspect of self-esteem called control, which is influence over one's environment of people, things, and events, by figuring out what works and what does not. Adults who do not rescue toddlers from small frustrations too quickly are helping to aid a growing sense of control over outcomes and events. As they make mistakes, try again, and practice what works, they will achieve autonomy, which we will explain in a minute. As they develop good feelings of self-worth, confidence in their abilities and gain control in their environment, they are developing self-esteem. When toddlers feel good about themselves, they seem to admire themselves and their growing control over their bodies. They are confident and like to show off their physical accomplishments for other people. They will often clap for themselves and laugh with delight at their new skills. According to Erickson, social emotional development begins in infancy when babies learn to trust or mistrust. Babies whose needs are met and who have a consistent environment develop a sense of trust. The sense of trust helps them as they enter Erickson's second stage of personality development, called autonomy versus shame and doubt. In this stage, toddlers are tasked with achieving autonomy, which is a form of self-government where they seek to do his or her own will. For most children, this stage begins between 12 and 18 months and is completed by 36 months. Autonomy builds on the toddler's expanding motor and intellectual skills. Toddlers are proud of their new skills and want to use them. They have the energy to carry out their goals. Because they have much more know-how than infants, they feel very independent. The independent feeling comes from toddlers' increasing self-awareness of their abilities. Erickson explained autonomy as the toddler's feelings of being able to do some tasks without help from others. He felt that caregivers should recognize toddlers' desire to be more independent and allow them to do what they can at their own pace. Erickson believed damage occurs when impatient caregivers complete tasks that toddlers are capable of doing themselves. Consistently criticizing or overprotecting toddlers leads them to feel they cannot control themselves and their world. Erickson called this feeling a sense of shame and doubt. So what do you guys think? Why is achieving autonomy important to your social emotional wellness later in life? I mean, what happens if you don't achieve autonomy? What could be some outcomes? Think about it. As children get older, their growing motor and intellectual abilities help them interact more with adults and other children. These early social interactions teach children new skills and attitudes, which help them get along with other people. This process of interacting with others helps to socialize children. When it comes to interacting with adults, the parent-child relationship begun in infancy is the foundation for future social connections. Social relations with parents, caregivers, and other adults like grandparents and family friends become well established in the toddler years. Although toddlers know more people now, they need a great deal of guidance from parents and other caregivers to help establish relationships with adults and other children. Toddlers who have formed healthy attachments to caregivers have a safe base from which to meet people. Although they continue to look to their main caregivers for social interaction, they now spend time with other adults than their caregivers. These adults include babysitters, relatives, and neighbors. Having more than one caregiver often helps them adjust to others and expect differences among people. When they have positive experiences with several adults, they develop trusting relationships with them. Having many caregivers, however, is not in the best interest of toddlers who need to develop secure attachments. During the second year, they tend to interact more with other children, although their first interactions are usually very brief. For example, they often imitate each other's actions with a toy without even talking to each other. Later, they talk as they play. Toward the end of the toddler years, a couple of toddlers may play together. For example, they may help each other fill a dump truck with sand. Toddlers are possessive of their toys and belongings when they play. They have not yet learned about ownership and therefore are not quite ready to share with other children. When toys are involved, they often grab, hit, or even bite. As they play, they also explore other children in much the same way as they explore objects. They often feel that overcoming another child is something that is positive. Harvey Karp, a popular writer of parenting books, jokingly says that toddlers have some caveman-like qualities when they play with other children. With appropriate adult guidance, toddlers can learn to interact with other children in positive ways. For example, they can sometimes share, return a snatched toy, and show concern for someone who is hurt. When children are better able to communicate, getting along with their playmates becomes much easier. A child's attachment to a caregiver begins in infancy and is completed between 12 and 18 months of age. Attachment has its biological roots in survival, but is learned by the child through correct, prompt, and consistent caregiving. A child shows attachment to his or her caregiver through attachment behaviors, which are seen when the infant or toddler feels stress or anxiety. For example, the crying that occurs with separation anxiety is an attachment behavior. In these cases, the child seeks proximity with the caregiver to whom he or she is attached, so they want to be near them. The child views this adult as the person best able to cope with the world. They are often attached to several people. Each attachment they have is a positive force in their life. When a toddler seeks out and tries to maintain nearness with a special caregiver, they have a secure attachment. They use this caregiver as a secure base from which to explore an unfamiliar setting or to approach an unfamiliar person. The child also seeks this caregiver's protection and comfort if a situation is perceived as dangerous or distressing. Secure family attachments often encourage out-of-family attachments. After 18 months of age, if attachments are secure, toddlers are more apt to cooperate even when adult and child goals differ. When children who have secure attachments become adults, they are able to calm themselves, be confident in their abilities, form lasting and positive relationships with others, and be overall well-adjusted. Toddlers who get inconsistent care, regardless of the reason, will develop insecure attachments. Because of the lack of consistent care, they are confused or feel they are not worthy of care or protection. A lack of adult support leads to toddlers who are vulnerable to the impact of trauma from any source. Because of trying so hard to get their basic needs met, they often lag behind secure toddlers in learning too. Insecure attachments are most damaging to a person's self-esteem and therefore their mental health. There are several types of insecure attachments and their causes and outcome for children during later stages of life. People who have insecure attachments can overcome them and learn new relationship skills. Alright, so anxious ambivalent attachment, also called resistant, is toddlers who show distress when unfamiliar people are nearby, even when their parents are present. They may stay close to their moms and react with great distress during separation. Once the moms return, they resist their mother's offers of comfort. Their reactions upon reunions are usually resistant and ambivalent. Okay, how you got that? The parents' behaviors is they don't read their infants or toddlers' signals of needs correctly, and they respond in ways that don't fit, like offering play activities when they're hungry or tired. They respond to their needs inconsistently. They respond in different degrees to the same needs. For example, if the child falls, the parent may ignore the child one time and overly comfort the child the next time. Long-term results of this is they are very clingy as toddlers. As older children, separation anxiety lasts longer than average. As school-age children, they want attention and are over-emotional, and they do not like to work on their own. As young adults, they are scared of entering into a close relationship with others. If they do, they are very controlling in these relationships. Throughout life, they are very easily frustrated. For the anxious avoidant attachment, toddlers explore toys and show no preference for their mom versus a stranger. During separation, they show no distress. Once the moms return, they ignore and avoid their moms. Parent behaviors that create this type of attachment is they respond to children's physical needs but not promptly. They do not respond to emotional needs like fear by comforting infants and toddlers that are left alone to deal with these non-physical needs. And they ignore delight or excitement shown by their infants or toddlers. Some long-term results: as infants and toddlers, they see no need to communicate their needs. As toddlers, they appear mature during separations because their anxiety is not exposed. As preschool and school age, they seem too independent. Even when frustrated, they don't ask for help. They also tend to be very aggressive in play. As school-age children and teens, they show impulsive behaviors, including bullying. As adults, they prefer to be alone and they value their independence, and they rarely admit to having positive feelings for others. Lastly is disorganized attachment. Toddlers who have this are inconsistent in their attachment behaviors. They may act as though they want to be picked up, but then they stiffen once they're held. They make poor eye contact with parents and other adults. Parents' behaviors that create disorganized attachment is they rarely respond to the needs of their infants or toddlers. If they respond, their responses don't fit the needs. They often neglect or abuse their child. They are depressed or on drugs. They're absent, and children have multiple foster home placements. As toddlers, they will freeze in footsteps for no apparent reason. As preschool and school age, they often are hard to understand because of exceptionally fast speech. They have a difficult time understanding other people's feelings, and their pretend play may be violent. As adults, they do not form lasting intimate relationships and are anxious and depressed. Throughout life, their behaviors will seem different from day to day. During the toddler years, children's developing abilities alter how they experience and express their emotions. Due to their increasing intellect, their emotions become more elaborate. They react to more stimuli than infants. They know more people to love and fear, experience more events, and can even imagine unreal things. They can better sense emotions and other people too. Also, emotions become more specific. For example, they may fear a neighbor's dog but love their own dog. In addition, emotions become more intense, sometimes even overwhelming to toddlers. Due to the intensity of emotions and their increased motor skills, they tend to express emotions physically more often than infants. On the other hand, toddlers' verbal skills enable them to express emotions verbally too if they are taught. Because of these new improved abilities, children's expressions of love and affection, fear, anxiety, and anger change during the toddler years. For love and affection, they are still attached to their caregivers, and they express love and affection by wanting to be near them. They seek caregivers when they are faced with a strange situation. This attachment seems to help other aspects of social emotional development because the love a toddler feels for caregiver also extends to other adults, children, and pets. Many fears that begin during infancy are evident even after the first birthday. Fears increase quickly after 2 years of age because toddlers know more about more things to fear. They know of more objects and situations that can hurt them. Survival fears are like fears such as crossing the street or falling from heights, guns, poisons, however, are not very well developed fears yet. Safety remains in the hands of caregivers. Toddlers also cannot distinguish real from unreal. They imagine many unreal things like monsters. They may also fear animals, darkness, nightmares, bad people, injury, gestures, and startling noises. Toddlers tend to act out their fears during play. For example, a 30-month-old who fears dogs may be seen barking and growling in play. Toddlers may imitate bad people seen on television or in books. Adults should handle these fears in a matter-of-fact way and never tease their toddlers about fears or push them into scary situations. For anxiety, toddlers may begin to experience nightmares around 2 years of age as a way with dealing with anxiety. These nightmares can stem from fears of being left alone, getting hurt, or angering adults. The details of the nightmares are unreal, often including unknown lands and monsters. If toddlers are content during the day, their nightmares do not reveal a problem. For most children, nightmares decrease in time. A trip to the library or bookstore may result in some humorous books to help the child deal with nightmares. Another form of anxiety is displayed through separation anxiety. Older toddlers between 30 and 35 months of age show less separation anxiety than younger children. Some separation anxiety continues into the toddler stage and sometimes beyond. Many toddlers overcome some of their separation anxiety if they feel a caregiver's love and know that the caregiver will return. Increased language skills help toddlers understand why parents sometimes leave. Parents must make sure their toddler receives good and loving care during separations. Children with insecure attachments may show separation anxiety even well beyond the toddler years. As for anger, toddlers desire for more independence and they have a strong will. When defeated in their goal-seeking behaviors, they react with anger. A sudden emotional outburst of anger, which is called a temper tantrum, often appears during the second year of life. A temper tantrum averages about 5 minutes in length. The child goes through 5 stages during the temper tantrum. Okay, the first is experiencing anger, shown by throwing themselves on the floor, kicking and screaming. Then they experience anger and sadness by crying, whining, and whimpering. Then they feel their anger levels drop. They desire cuddling, and then they forget about the tantrum and start doing other activities. Okay? Tantrums tend to happen when something does not go a toddler's way. Because this is often the case, temper tantrums are common for toddlers. Temper tantrums are meant to attract attention, but often are not directed at anyone. Children achieve a number of social emotional developmental milestones during the toddler years. Due to changes in brain development, motor skills, and intellectual language abilities, their social emotional worlds begin to mature, which lays the foundation for development beyond the toddler years. We will talk about some of the milestones in class, but at what age can they respond to simple requests? It's 18 to 24 months. When they show love to non-caregiving adults, it's usually 2 to 3 years. And when do they show intense separation anxiety? It's between a year and a year and a half. All right, guys, that's the end of this section. Thanks for listening.